PEMCAST.
Hi everyone! Welcome to another PEMCAST episode, and today we have Junn. Do you want to just introduce a little bit about yourself?
So hello, I'm Jane. I'm currently a young adult. I am 22 years old and I just graduated from Rutgers. I was majoring in supply chain and marketing, and yeah, that's basically where I'm at right now. Yeah.
And then you're obviously a part of our ministry, so can you just tell us which areas you serve in?
So I'm a part of the PEM podcast team. I'm also part of PEM Photos, and then I serve as a PYC teacher.
Amazing. And I just know Jane a little bit from just, I guess, growing up together at this church. You've been here for what? How many years?
I don't even know, since I was
Over
like...
a decade?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, were you at Rutgers basement too or no?
When what?
Like, the church was Rutgers basement.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Well, you were here when they did like VBS
Service.
in the main
Yeah,
lobby, right?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Me too. We had VBS in the main lobby.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. I've seen you like grow, and like it's just crazy how now I'm just gonna listen to your life story.
Basically.
But yeah, like I just remember us going on a missions trip and you sharing your walk then, and I feel like that was around the time when you were applying to colleges.
Oh, yeah.
And you were hearing back from colleges. So today, you wanted to talk a little bit about PYC and your time at MES, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, you can start whenever.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, during my time as a senior, when I was doing my applications for colleges, I really only applied to like 2-3 places. I did ED to Johns Hopkins University, and that was mainly because my older sister, she went there for undergrad, and my parents were really pushing me to also do it. So that was the main reason why. But I think deep inside, I really didn't want to go there. And obviously, I went to Rutgers, so I feel like that was also part of God's plan, basically, to place me in Rutgers. And then the second place was Rutgers, and then third was Colby College, which was just out of...
Is that where your sister...
That's where Ham goes, yeah. But that third college is because my parents also told me to apply. So Rutgers was really the only place I guess, wanted to go. But at the same time, too, during high school, I really struggled with mental health. So I didn't really have a drive to really apply to places, but I was okay with Rutgers. So during then, that was my time at PYC, and a lot of the people in my grade actually also came to Rutgers with me. So it was like a big group of us, and all of us also continued to attend PEM and also Emmaus in the first semester, I guess. And I would say, like right now, there's like 3-4 of us still here after, I guess, like 4 or 5 years.
You want to give them a little shout out?
Oh, hey Tongju, hey Michael.
So I wanted to ask you, because like while you were talking, I was just curious. You said you didn't want to go to Johns Hopkins or Colby because, you felt like you were forced into that, like applying there. But then what made you gravitate towards Rutgers?
I did want to stay closer to home, but I also wanted to continue going to PEM because I felt like PEM was to me as like a high schooler, like we had teachers in PYC that were from the PEM ministry, and also PEM priest team also served at the retreats. And so it made me want to like get to know the people a bit more. And so I think also part of me was just like really fearful to go out and try to find something new. So, and I think God really just like placed me in this sort of comfort level where it's like still new, yet like a comforting sense of like, oh, like I can have a community here in Rutgers, like in Central Jersey. Yeah.
Do you think, I guess like, the people who stayed, like they're your friends too, right? Like, do you think that they stayed maybe for similar reasons? Or, like, what do you think made them stay versus, like, going out and, like, living their own life, I guess?
Well, I would say I don't think it was easy for any of us. I do think the transition from PYC into PEM was rough for probably everyone. I think in the beginning, there was like this somewhat stereotype, I guess, of like PYC students coming into Emmaus that like, well, I don't even know what the stereotype really was, but it was just like, oh, like you hear they're from PYC and then suddenly we got this vibe.
What's the vibe?
I don't know what the vibe was, but...
Because I was from PYC too, and I was like, I don't think I felt the vibe.
Oh, because I think at that time too, Emmaus was growing a lot more. So, and that was around when P. Danny really was like settling into Emmaus as like that college ministry, and like it was taking shape and form. And so at that same time too, like not just like there was like PYC like stereotypes, there was also like North Jersey students and then South Jersey students, like kids who went to Jubilee and all that. And I guess it was like in the beginning, it just felt very separated between a lot of the students. Like a lot of South Jersey kids would hang out together. A lot of Central kids, I guess, would hang out with each other, and North would also be like a group as well. And I think in the beginning, of course, it's like so hard to like break that kind of ice to mingle within each other. But I do think during that time, the Central kids, or I guess PYC kids, had a bit more of a harder time because PYC is also like in the same church as PEM. So I think a lot of us thought that the transition would have been much smoother than we were anticipating, because it's like, oh, we know like the pastor, we know some of the people, like young adults here who have served on PYC as our teachers. But I think that kind of like high expectation I just felt like suddenly like I couldn't call it like my church in a sense. And I think that's like one of the reasons why maybe like so many of like my friends, they also struggled to really call like PEM their church. And I guess like through the years, like for those who have really stuck with PEM, like I know for sure like for them too, like it wasn't an easy like journey either. I'm sure they have also like their fair share of like stories and like emotions that they've gone through. But I think in the end, like where I am right now, like I feel very, very content with like how I stayed. Yeah.
Do you think there was like a beauty in staying? And I feel like, you know, you're telling me there is. And like, what do you think that is?
I think it's the beauty of definitely just not knowing exactly what was God's plan for me. Because I think as like a high school graduate coming out of PYC into PEM, it's also like, I guess I kind of came in with like, not like I don't know how to describe, not ego, but like, oh, like I know people. So it's like, I feel more like at home. But because God let those expectations, like he like basically like broke down those walls for me, it's like I had to like start afresh, and also with my faith as well. And basically I felt like God was showing me like, oh, this is what true like love is, like love for your community, loving God, and love for the church as well. Because I did struggle a lot with calling PEM as my church. So because I was having trouble with calling PEM my church, I had trouble even calling like Emmaus my community, and also wanting to like, I guess, like serve or do things for the church. Yeah.
You know, it's actually crazy because I was thinking about this too. And like, I honestly don't think it's a coincidence I'm hosting your podcast. Like, I'm like, everything you're saying, I'm just like, wow, I felt the same thing. You know, like, I also went from PYC to Emmaus to PEM, right? And like, it's all technically under the same church. We're a praise church. A lot of people call praise PEM, but then like it's all under praise. And there's KM and there's EM, and PEM is under EM.
Yeah.
And just talked about PYC and I guess like Kid Space, everything that is under KM. So like after KM, like I think it's like the KM transition to EM, right?
Yeah.
Like the culture was so KM, and it is like pretty stark contrast from EM. I think. I feel like they're very like, you know, Korean culture kind of based, and we're very like American culture. Go with the flow.
Yeah.
I mean, like intentionally.
Yeah,
I think, I also felt like kind of a displacement almost when I went from KM to EM. And I think, I feel like the beauty in staying though is walking with your community, right? Like, I literally saw, like, and you too, you literally saw this church being built up from first floor where we had VBS in the main lobby with dividers, you know, like,
Yeah.
who was it, Pastor Umbi?
Umbi, oh my
And
god.
shout out to Pastor Jenny Han, right? Did you remember her?
Yes.
She gave me my first Bible. Yeah. Like, I just remember that distinctly. But like, Pastor Umbi, and like, I just remember her leading VBS. And then like, we had dividers up and like, everyone was like jumping in the main lobby.
Yeah.
And then the main sanctuary was built. And then we moved in there for service. And it's like, and then we got a second floor and a third floor. And like, I just think it's like the beauty of watching the church get built up and also like walking with the people. Like, I think if you had left, Don always says like, you know, PEM is special because people that were part of this community, I guess, like left and then they come back, right? And I do think that's very true, but I think also PEM is special because people stay, you know, people believe in the mission, people want to really grow with the church. I think walk with the people, you know, and I think like that's the beauty in people staying and like witnessing all that.
Yeah.
Reflection I had was like, if you walk and then like look back, I just feel like all this time at this church, it was so purposeful, and I see like God's fingerprints all over it.
No, yeah.
Right?
That's
Like-
basically it.
And I was like, yo, when you were sharing your story, I was like, that's crazy. I literally had the same thought this week. That's gone.
No, literally. Because like even just like me staying at Rutgers, like I feel like part of me too was still just like, oh, like what if I like went out of state and like had a different life, I guess, and met like different people, or like I went to a different church and everything. But I do think just everything felt so purposeful, like even just like the ups and downs that I've went through during like my 4 years of college, and then that whole like PYC to Emmaus whatever transition, like each moment was very purposeful and meaningful, that like it's all shaping me to like who I am today. And that I can give this story, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's still working. Like
That's very true.
I feel like because I see the way he's been faithful throughout my whole life, like I can trust him with my future. And I feel like it's like, yeah, like stuff gets in the way, but it's really about, I think, like walking with the community. Like, I mean, that's what today's sermon was about.
Yeah.
Too, basically. I think it's all like perfect storm. So that was, I guess, your journey from PYC to Emmaus. So do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences at Emmaus?
So during my freshman year, I got cut short too because of COVID. And basically, I would say my freshman year was probably the toughest. I feel like a lot of freshman year is the hardest part of college for almost everyone, because it's like you're trying to figure out who your friends are, how to do classes, make your own schedule and everything. So it's like you're being thrown so many things at once, and you're basically being told to like figure it out, right? And I think with Emmaus, I don't know why I felt this way, but I felt like there was some sort of pressure on me to step up into some sort of like leadership position. I don't know why, but it just felt like I had some sort of like pressure or like expectations from people to really, I guess, set a tone for the class that I was in. And I don't know if that was like whether or not that was true, but
Do you feel like you were always in like positions of leadership and leading people, and that's why like you felt that expectation?
maybe. But I also think during that time too, I was feeling, oh, I kind of just want to sit back or be served. But I mean, right now, me looking back at it now, I'm just like Pete Danny says this like all the time too. He's like, oh, because you have been served and now you want to like take a break. It's like not wrong to think that way, but you're stepping out of the community from doing that, because even though you want to give the opportunity to other people, it's like if you know that God has given you like that calling and that role, then like, why ignore it? So I guess like then that was me ignoring it in a sense.
But would you say you felt like you just didn't feel ready, right? Basically. You think?
Yeah, basically.
But like I was also reflecting on this. The analogy of like you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on someone else when you're flying on the plane, right? Because I was just on the plane, so like I that was fresh in my mind. And I just thought like, people use that analogy to kind of allude to like how you have to take care of yourself before, I guess, like pouring out to others, right? And I think, like I felt the same struggles. I did serve in Emmaus and stuff, and I also felt kind of like, I was putting all my time in Emmaus, so my grades were kind of suffering. But I think I remember like talking to Danny too, like in Emmaus, and I was like, yo, I feel like I'm doing this for God, but why are my grades suffering? But then it's like also you have to be a steward of, I think, like what your role is in life too. Like if you feel like you have a calling, like, yeah, like that's great, and serving is great too. But I think it has to come from a place of overflow too, like you don't want to be forced into it.
Right.
So did you like start serving in Emmaus a bit after then?
I started serving, so when everyone came back to campus, this was my junior year, and that's when I started Emmaus leadership. Yeah. But before that, I was just like very hesitant on joining leadership. During my sophomore year, I had the chance to, but I didn't apply because I felt like I was mainly avoiding it, and also it was quarantine, so quarantine was quite difficult for me. Well, difficult for everyone, basically, because you're just sitting in your room. It was Zoom-Maus, which was quite an interesting time. I think during my junior year, that was when I kind of just accepted that, like, okay, I don't know what it is God is trying to do or like wants me to do, but I'll just go and do it. Because at that time too, I still couldn't really call, I guess, Emmaus my community, because I still kind of felt this outsider, I guess, vibe in a sense.
I see. So going back to Emmaus, do you think like, like one thing I did witness about Emmaus was that you guys were strong during the pandemic. So do you think that had something to do with you wanting to step up or like,
I think seeing the dedicated leaders who kept coming out to the Tuesday night Zoom-Maus, they really did. Well, even showing up to the Zoom-Maus itself was like a lot, because it's like, oh, like they're not even gonna answer my questions, just sit there in silence. But I think that's like I found that very admirable, because, no matter what they're showing up to, and it's like they know kind of exactly what they're getting themselves into every Tuesday night, they still came. They still wanted to serve and just be with their community. And I guess part of me wanted to do the same for the new people that were coming in for my junior year when everyone was coming back to campus.
So, what was like your experience like with Junn?
Junn, during the first semester, I was a lot more active, or I came out during the Tuesday nights. And then there was also Discord Mayas where people played.
You guys are just putting Mayas on top of everything, and it's working.
It's so good. There's Skate Mayas, Chris Mayas, Thanks Mayas,
Coffee House Mayas.
Coffee House Mayas. It works with almost everything. But yeah, during that time, those were like the ways we had fellowship. And then later on, there was like the regional hangouts where we like met up by like North, Central, and South Jersey. And I forget when that was really. That might have been the summer, or yeah, I think it was the summer. But basically during that time, it was a bit more difficult for me to go out and I guess meet the community because I couldn't drive. At the time, I didn't have my license or permit.
Did you get it?
I have it now,
Okay,
yeah.
nice.
I can drive now. Be careful. But I always felt bad to ask for rides. I mean, okay, shout out to Darren because he always drove me. But inside for me, I always like felt really bad to like ask for rides because all my life I always had to ask for rides, and I know there's like a burden of like driving other people, but even if they like say like yes and like they're willing to, like as a person asking for a ride every time too, it's like, oh, like I feel like I'm burdening this person so much. So it's like that stopped me from like wanting to like go out and like see people because I didn't want to ask for a ride, I guess. But because of that, I couldn't really see my community, and I guess that kind of distanced me from some people and from like getting closer with other Emmaus students as well during the quarantine. And it kind of felt like after all that ended and we all came back to campus, just like a lot of other people got closer, and just, yeah, I just kind of felt out of the bubble. Yeah.
So I guess what was your reaction to that?
I think for me, I just tried not to think so much about it because I was like, oh, I mean, makes sense because everyone else can drive and I can't drive, and me being not being able to drive, like of course I want to be able to like go out and like hang out with people. So I tried to not really get to me, but then I guess as the year went by, it kind of just like showed more and more of how much I guess it did impact me and my view of my community and also Emmaus, I guess. Yeah.
So from the time where like you felt like a, I guess, disconnect from Emmaus, you said that you went into like a season of like joining the leadership. Right? So like, do you want to talk more about how, like what led you to make that choice?
So even though at that time, for me, I couldn't really tell if I wanted to stay in Emmaus and at PEM because I was having a lot of trouble, I guess, connecting with the people and trying to find just a sense of community within the church. But there was still, like, in the back of my mind, it was always like, oh, like, leadership, or like, I should join leadership. And like, other people too were like, oh, like, have you thought about doing leadership?
You sure it wasn't P. Danny's voice?
I mean, yeah.
Hey, it's not.
I mean, not false, not, yeah. But I think even if it was P. Danny's voice, I think it was right because like looking at it now, like my heart for Emmaus is like so huge, and I love even now to serve Emmaus.
Are you're still serving?
I'm not serving like directly, but like I still come out to like the Tuesday nights. I've been going to EMP as well, so like meeting the new freshmen and like getting to know more students, I guess.
So you still have like an attachment to Emmaus.
Yeah.
That's good. Still loving on them.
Yeah.
But so like that was kind of, I guess, you realized, I guess you actually do love this community after you stepped into that leadership role, right? Do you want to talk more about your experiences of how it felt like to be a leader, you know, kind of like I guess shepherding people?
Oh yeah. That was very different because that was also the year P. Danny wanted to restructure house church more like how PEM does house churches. So before it was, honestly don't really know how it was before. I mean, I was part of, my freshman year, I was part of Nikki's house church. We were supposed to have like 5 people, but only like 2-3 people showed up. And one of them was me and Nikki. But I think at that time it was like we were placed into different house churches. But that year, my junior year, we split into different groups, and we wanted to invite people to come to house church. And based off of like, I guess whoever comes, like that would be the house church basically. But our vision was like, you know, Emmaus, come as you are and belong. So
I like that.
No,
I
yeah.
like that catchphrase. You know, like I think I designed like, I used to be in like the media, and I designed apparel with Eunice and like the media team at the time. And I just remember like, I was like, this is a really nice catchphrase, because I feel like it really fits in with like the vision for Emmaus and like the vision for PEM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for college students, because I feel like right now where Emmaus is at, it's like that phrase is very fitting because there's a lot of like new believers or also like old believers that are coming back into the church right now. And I think with Emmaus, specifically house church, like that whole house church model, like that brings people who are afraid to even like come out to like a bigger setting like church or even Emmaus, like that really helps them like get to know people like individually too. But yeah, with leadership, that was like the new thing, and I never really led, like it felt like leading small group in a sense, and I never really like had any experience in that way before. My junior year, me and Dan Lee, we were house church hosts together, and we had like no idea like what we were doing. But every week, like people still came out and like being so faithful, like not just to house church, but also to like meeting new people, meeting like the Emmaus community, and like coming out to like events and all that. And even though that was a lot of like trial and error, just seeing the beauty of how like, even if some of these people, they couldn't really say, I guess, like yes to God yet, they were still interested, they were still curious, and that's the reason why they would also like continue to come out to house church.
You know what I'm finding is that I think the theme of your story and this podcast is literally like walking together, right? Like before you felt such a disconnect from the pandemic because, you know, like you know, I know like the burden of like asking and like, you know, if that was a hindrance, right? And that I guess kind of led to feeling more of a disconnect from your community. I feel like when you did maybe trust God and like stepped into your leadership role, you walked with your people, right? Like you and Dan, like you might have not known exactly how to go about it. You might have felt unequipped, you know? But I think behind, I guess, the heart of PEM, I just see people wanting to show up and walk together, you know? And like, I think that is also the beauty of PEM, you know, even like the gathering where like Christian and Peter started. Not a lot of people were coming out at first, but then it was like there were consistent people like showing up, and I think it was supposed to be like a summer thing, and then it became like a yearly, weekly thing. And I think it's like that's the beauty of PEM. As long as there's people who are willing to show up, like the church is gonna move. You know, like God is gonna work. As long as we keep showing up and having faith that like, you know, we're broken. Like hurt people, right? But I think. And that's why some people fall away from the church. But I think it's all about really just like walking, even despite all that, because you know, if we look to God, then you know, love does cover a multitude of sins. Right? You know, I understand like there's some offenses that might not be like forgivable, but at the end of the day, like love doesn't keep a record of wrong, right? I mean, I don't know how we got here, but like, I think like, I guess it's more, I just see a common thread of just walking with community. Like, no matter how, I guess, hurt or like how loved you feel, it's just half the battle is like showing up.
Because I think that's what I figured out, like, reason why I'm still here, like I was still there in Emmaus, and during my senior year, like what was God's purpose for me to join leadership? And it really felt like the reason was because he wants me to like walk with people who aren't that strong in their faith, who are I don't know the word.
Faith, like new believers.
Or
you know? You're just introduced to God and just need someone like people to walk with. Basically.
Because at the same time too, I was also doing other club stuff. So I was part of the Chinese student organization, and then I was also part of a fraternity, Alpha Phi Omega, all while doing also like amazing leadership. And I think also like with that too, God purposely like had me a part of those communities as well, to bring like my friends and like introduce me to people like, oh, like, hey, like, I know you go to church, like, I know you go to like this Emmaus, as what people say, Emmaus. And they would ask me like, oh, like, what do you guys do? Like, when do you guys meet? And whenever I heard that, I was like so happy. I was like, oh my gosh, come with me like this Tuesday, like let's go. And even if like they come, they visit, and then like they like go, like I think just having those small like interactions, that's where God wanted me to be, where it's like, even if it's not like committed, that they had that chance to even come visit and also experience just like his holy presence. And I like some people did end up saying too, which I'm really glad. Yeah, I mean, I know like shout out to like Bernice. I know she brought Jen, you know, like everyone thinks Jen brought Bernice. Bernice brought, that's fact checks right there. But then like I think it's beautiful to see like people who don't know of what community is, you know, like I think it's different. I do really feel a difference between like the community I have in church and the community I have outside of church, right? And I think kind of allowing the community outside of church to be invited into a community that is under God and under his, you know, rules and, you know, commandments, and just like I think the common thing is love, right? Really opens people's eyes to like what really matters in this world. Like that's just like my personal take on it, but I think it was very purposeful of you being in those areas like frat or like other clubs or communities and like bringing them to this one, you know, where like they can see how God works. Even if they don't know him, they could at least witness it. Because like I think that's like the beauty of walking with people. They get to look back and then see like, oh, this happened. Oh, maybe it was God. And then they like, they know about God that way. You know, it's like, and I really think like, honestly, it's really about the people, you know?
Like more than anything, I feel like compassion goes a long way. You know, like I think listening to people and like hearing their stories and like just seeing them for who they are and accepting them, I think goes a long way, you know? And I think that's what honestly Jesus did in his time on this earth. But so you said that I guess like the catchphrase for Emmaus is like come together and belong. And you know, I'm sure not everyone felt like they belonged completely, you know, just like how you were a part of this community and you didn't feel like you belonged completely. So as like a leader of Emmaus and how you like oversaw people, I guess what's your take on if they felt like they belonged?
I feel like almost every student goes through something like that, where it's, of course, it's church, Emmaus, and we have that expectation of it being very welcoming and being very, that they're like taking care of like them, like students, and like looking after them. And I think at the same time, that expectation, it kind of, I guess, takes away like the human part of like people. A lot of students have that feeling of, I guess, not belonging, especially in big settings. And Emmaus is like over 100 people now. So obviously it's gonna feel a bit overwhelming, and also like you see people and you see those people are like hanging out or like gathering, and it's like, oh, like they must be so close. But something I've learned while I was at Emmaus and also as a leader is that, you know, just as much as like what I could be thinking, that same person that I'm looking at could also be thinking that too. And I think it's also the expectation that us college students put on to the leaders, that that we're being taken care of and that they are looking after us and that they need to welcome us. And I think that expectation is very like destructive in and of itself, because as much as like, yes, leaders are here to like take care of like our community and also look after each other, leaders are also students too. Like they also need as much caring and taking care of, just like any other student. And I think that's something a lot of people might forget, is that like even leaders too, like they might also have a sense of like maybe they don't belong, or kind of just like confused about like what it is that their role is as a part of Emmaus, as a part of like leadership, or I guess house church even too.
So what do you think the leaders needed at the time?
At the time? Well, during that time, P. Danny actually, during one of our leadership meetings, he did this basically like group session where it's like, oh, like if you have to say anything, like just say it. And I think that really,
nice.
Yeah, it's like very,
시원해.
Very raw. Like you can just like say like what you've been thinking. And I think that really helped some of the team, and also realize, like see like from other perspectives, like, oh, like this person like has also been feeling this way. And it's like, you know, you never really know what other people are going through, and or like what other leaders are going through. It's all like deceiving of the eye. Like you only see what like you see, and nothing underneath that surface.
Like you see like a leader figure, but then like they're also like human.
Yeah.
So like I guess like the leadership retreat, it sounds like it was like a community for the leaders. You know, like did that I guess help in making like you think the leaders feel like they belonged?
I think so. But it does, during the semester, of course it gets busy, and then like there aren't as many like intimate meetings. So I think that's when it gets hard, when it's like everyone is in their busy season, and then those kind of like thoughts, conflicts, or whatever like arise. It's kind of just like you forget that like, oh, we're all here because we're all broken. We're all here because we want to serve each other. We love God and we love Emmaus. But I think at that same time, I think it was just very hard for all the college students. It's just everyone going through similar things, but it's like different at the same time.
I think like it's hard when like leaders, I guess, want to pour out. And I guess it goes back to like that taking care of yourself too before serving others. You know, like leaders, you know, as much as they love the community and want to step up and serve, like they're also, I'm sure, like burdened by some like community too. But you know, I think, you know, love does cover that. But at the same time, like I do see there's care needed, and I think the leaders too. You know, because you know it's not easy. I don't think.
Yeah. I think it's also just really important to point out, because for me, I know during those times where I found it really difficult to, I guess, continue to like want to come out and like be with Emmaus, be with like community. Like even during those times where I was just like, oh, like I feel like Emmaus is not my community, or like I don't feel belong, that like, oh, like what was the reason why I like first wanted to serve and like wanted to be a part of like this community? And it's because like I just love God and I want to be there for God's people. Yeah.
It's a very nice heart. So I guess like I know P. Danny is just mass people follow him. The army of Emmaus follow him wherever he goes, right? So I know that, you know, he took on also the role of a senior high pastor at our church for PYC. So it's actually kind of ironic that you're coming back. Like you came back to PYC, right?
Right?
To serve as a teacher, but I guess what was your experience with that like?
It really does feel full circle, because a lot of the kids that are in PYC, like senior high right now, there were like kids when I last saw them, like Kid Space.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like
Wait, they were your kids? Or
yeah.
What? Wait, they were your Kid Space kids, and then now they were your kids?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Or not like Kid Space, but like they were like junior high, like coming out of Kid Space into junior high.
But, I mean, that's so crazy that they had you again as a teacher.
Oh no, yeah. Like right now I have Alice, and like that image of her being like the little girl who's like yelling like every second, like that image is still inside of my head, but she's my student now. And it's just like crazy how much they grew. Well, they're still the same person, but like they grew. But I would say, so the year I started was during my my senior year, and I was TAing for the senior girls, and Grace was the teacher. And she was my teacher for senior year as well.
That's crazy.
During PYC.
It's just like all intertwined.
Oh no, yeah. It's like very weird.
Yeah.
But I guess like during that, for me, I was still kind of like on and off, because I wasn't sure about like if I wanted to do TA or not, because I initially joined PYC to help out with the praise team, because it wasn't really a praise team at the time. It was mainly like Christian and David doing it. And I was like, oh, like if you guys need like any more hands, like I was like willing to help. And so I started to sing for PYC worship. And then of course, just like segueing in, like small groups happen after that. And Pastor Danny's like, oh, hey, Jay, you want to join a class?
The voice came back.
Oh, P. Danny. Yes. But that was the class that I joined, and it just felt very full circle moment where I was in their shoes, worrying about colleges and where I'm gonna get accepted, and just looking forward to freedom like the summer. And it just made me like think back on a lot of like my experiences in PYC and then just my whole like college journey, because they're graduating high school, I was graduating college. So it's like, for me, it was like, not that I have like, I guess, wisdom to tell them, but like sharing my experiences with them, but also on a level where it's like, oh, I know these girls because like I've had that relationship with them. And I felt like that was like so different, or like, it just felt very precious, because it's like, before I was their like VBS leader thing, but now it's like I'm a part of their life group as a TA, and I get to walk with these girls during their senior year, which is like such a huge part of their lives too. And it was a big blessing to see just them grow during their last year. And
you know what though? Like, I also feel like when you're teaching these PYC kids, like, I think there's merit to like your experiences at PYC too. I've also became a PYC teacher. PYC, you know? And I also like, you know, I felt like I was able to say like what I felt like I should say, and what maybe they needed to hear. I don't know. Like, I don't know if they needed to hear that, but like, like I felt like I could kind of guide my girls at the time, you know, like better way, because I was in their shoes like a couple years back, you know? Like, I think you know the context of PYC. Like, you've grown up with this community, you know the culture and like how it could be, right? Like, you've walked with PYC. So I think like when you're going back and teaching them, I think there's a lot of value in the fact that you also walked like through PYC, you know? And I just found that to be true for me when I was like, wow, like this is how my teachers felt. You know, like now I was also able to put myself in the teacher's shoes.
Right.
And be like, wow, like
I was annoying.
yeah. Shout out to Joe Lee. He made me do like 10 push-ups because we weren't listening or something.
Oh my gosh, Jolie was scary as a PYC teacher.
I think he made me cry once. John's like nodding in the back. No, but we love Joe. Just kidding. We love Josiah. No, but I mean, we love the community, you know? So I guess you've touched upon PYC, we've talked about Emmaus, and I guess now as a young adult and a member at PEM, like how does that feel?
Scary.
A bit.
Yeah. I feel like I'm still getting used to this whole young adult life, I guess. I'm applying to jobs right now, and right now job search is kind of tough, but you know, I just be doing the same thing over and over, just applying, doing a part-time at a cafe right now, which has been fun because I've always wanted to learn how to make coffee, like make an espresso.
Me too. Always wanted to barista. I mean, both, but like barista more.
But basically, that's where I am at, I guess, like with working life stuff. Oh, I'm also doing like a UI UX design Google course thing right now.
Oh. I heard a lot of people are doing that.
Oh yeah. So that's like something on the side that I've been doing. But other than that, I'm just doing that. I've been visiting Emmaus on Tuesday nights because what else do I have better to do than see you lovely college students? Yeah, and then PYC, and then I've been visiting house churches recently.
Oh, mine. In fact, she's been visiting mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's still just all very new. I don't really know where I see myself right now, I guess, because I just came out of college, and it's just like, I feel like a lot of us are still trying to just figure it out.
It's true. I mean, so am I, and I've been here. But I mean, you know, as someone, I feel like we had very similar kind of experiences. I do want to say, like, if I were to kind of like talk to myself when I was in your shoes, when like I just graduated, I didn't know what to do, like, but I was still serving in the areas I was serving. I think even though it feels scared, I think, you know, like, honestly, young adults, I feel like are just as scared as for the me as kids too. Like, I'm scared of them. But like, you know, like I think the heart of Pem is just to pour out, you know, and just like to keep walking. And like, I do feel like, you know, I would love to get to know anyone, you know, and I feel like, I think there is that fear in approaching young adults, but then at the end of the day, like, we're a community, so why is there like fear, you know?
I guess.
I mean, like, I get like the social anxiety, I get it, but like, I think at the end of the day, we are willing to walk with each other, you know? And I think, I would say, like, I think you're doing great. Aww. I admire your walk. I admire your, like, consistency and your, I guess, persistency to keep walking with your community. No matter if, like, you felt like it or not, you just showed up. And I think there's so much beauty in that. And I feel like just keep walking. You know, as a young adult, as, like a fresh grad, I think it's very, like, kind of, like, daunting to see, like, what's in the future, but I think, like, you know, I think there's beauty in like just being faithful to the community and like just keep walking in faith. Like, even though you don't know where God may lead you, I feel like I was at that place, like how you feel, but then I feel like now I'm at a place where I think God did confirm like my purpose in life and stuff like that. And then I look back at my walk, at like my wandering, and like I just kept showing up, but I was wandering. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But then he eventually led me to my purpose. And then I was able to look back and like say he was so faithful, you know? Like all those moments where it was like kind of like, we talked about a lot of moments where it's like you taught in PYC, but then you came back to PYC. I think all those moments are definitely intentional, and I feel like they're very purposeful. Like, I think if you have faith in God, I do think that, like, he does care, like, he has only the best intentions for you, you know? Like, what you want, he wants better. You know what I mean? So I think, like, it's just, as long as I think we entrust him in that, like, he'll show that. But I feel like sometimes we do a little detours when we don't listen. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But I think he redeems that. But then I think, yeah, we're just walking to see Jesus, right? Yeah. Yeah, I guess, like, at the end of the day, like, even if you don't know where you're going, I do believe that God is looking out for you and, like, is directing your path, you know? I think, like, all we gotta do is really listen, right? Yeah. We don't do that enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even during the retreat, too, like, that was, oh my gosh, like, during the PEM podcast, like, the little interview thing, like, the question, what was the question?
The rooted? Like,
no.
Not that one.
It was, like...
What's something you learned at this retreat?
Yeah. Like, what did I learn from the retreat? And my answer was basically, like, I'm not listening, like, I thought I was listening to God, but I'm really not. It's just like, you know how when your parents, like, they tell you something, like, chanso리, and you're like, I know, but then you don't really know, or, like, you don't want to act upon it. Like, that was basically me with God, and I was just telling him, like, oh, like, I know, like, I'm supposed to do this, like, I know, but I wasn't doing it. And just at that retreat, it was just like a wake-up call for me.
This most recent
retreat, yeah. Just like a wake-up call to me that, like, you know, it's so, like, God's plan for me is so direct. I just have to follow it. But of course, you know, just like life detours, yeah. So I think that's where I am at right now.
That's crazy because, bro, I relate to you hard. Like, I literally felt the exact same way. But I think eventually I just learned, because like, it just happened right now, like, in my life. I learned that eventually you'll get there. Like, eventually, like, it'll come to fruition. Eventually, like, he's gonna get you to where you need to be. Like, I always, my whole life, I was like, I think I know where I need to be, which is with God. But like, how do I get there? You know, like I don't think I knew how, but I didn't need to know the how because like he has led my life like very intentionally, you know, and I just need to like follow and trust, you know. I just once my eyes open, I look back and I'm just like, whoa, like that
Oh yeah.
happened, you know, it's just crazy. But yeah. I did share about like how God has worked in my life, but I do feel like I felt like like a fog over my head, like literally my entire life until like I graduated nursing. But like I think, you know, like as I'm, I guess like experiencing the world, I see that I was kind of almost like crippled by anxiety, you know, and like I just felt like that wasn't enabling me to see people for who they are too, you know, like social anxiety and like, stuff like that. It's very like, it was like a barrier for me, you know, and like yeah, I think it did play a factor in just seeing, I guess, my faith journey clearly too. And I feel like, you know, it has gotten better, and I just feel like that has contributed to like seeing things more clear. And like, do you feel like, you know, do you have experiences with like, I guess, mental health, like stuff like that?
So, I mean, I feel like I agree with that. Like, with anxiety, I feel like, well, I guess just mental health in general, that for me, it plays a huge part with my faith in a sense, because so for me, I struggle with depression and anxiety, also social anxiety, I guess. But with those conditions, it makes it hard to, I guess, constantly be in faith and trusting God, because it's like, you know, you're supposed to, it's like, yes, I do trust in God. I do believe in his plans. But then there are these just overwhelming thoughts of like anxieties, what ifs, or just like overthinking too. And it's something like sometimes it's just something I cannot control. And because of that, like I blame myself because I think that like, oh, because I can't control it, like that is my sin. Like that just lives within me, and that I can't, like I'll never, like I guess achieve like full faith in God, because I'm always struggling with like anxieties of like, oh, I don't think God can do this, or it's like I'm doubting God's plans. And then it's like, oh, because I am doubting God's plans, I know that I am not fully, okay, that's like my whole like overthinking, basically.
Literally the same thought process.
Yeah. So it's like, I guess with like mental health, it makes me feel bad about my own faith. It makes me question about like, just like the whole like, oh, like whole like, oh, am I Christian? Or just like, do I believe, or am I believing out of like fear of like not having like identity or something like that? Just like very deep overthinking thoughts that are coming out of my like anxiety. I think also with like mental health too, like social anxiety, like that's a huge thing. And I think like in our society today too, like for a lot of people, like ever since COVID happened, like that changed everything. And I feel like even just like meeting up with people, talking to people, like reaching out, like, I mean, that was something I already had trouble with, but like even more so now, it's like harder. And like, even like when I was visiting house church, like that time period was like 1 month. And during those weeks where it was like, I told Heyman that I would be coming that Thursday, but then I end up not showing up because I'm just so afraid, or just like, there's this huge like emotion over me. And after that happens, I always like, you know, like, just like hate myself, because I'm just like, oh, like, why did I not go? It's like, I could have just went, just like fought it. And then I I just feel very down about myself. And then I'm just like, oh, is this just like how it is? Like, will I always, I guess, just be wired in a sense like this way? I'm not too sure, but
I think you have to kind of also give grace to yourself, you know, like, I mean, this goes back on like, you know, sometimes if you need to rest, you can rest without feeling guilt, you know, like, I think it's okay to like find, I guess, your sense of like place in this world first before pouring out like to community too. Because I think in that moment when you can't see, like, I think you have to be kinder to yourself, you know, like it's not redeemable. Like, I do believe God redeems all things, whether that be depression, anxiety, or like any other like ailments that hinder us from seeing him. Because, you know, like, as much as this faith is about our walk, I do feel like God also sees us, you know, and sees us in our mental health struggles and like all like anything that we go through. And I think he also is such a gentle like teacher, you know, like he knows like that we'll mess up, but he knows like in the end, like, are we fighting from victory,
right,
you know?
yeah.
And like I think it's hard. It's like I get the feeling because I think it's so hard to see. It's hard to see when you desire God so bad, right? But then I think like we talked about, like, it's about just showing up. And I think because, you know, I showed up in, you know, my Bible reading. I showed up in prayer. Now, I wasn't perfect. Like when I was depressed, so like I was just not, you know, reading or praying, but then I like picked myself back up and then I kept showing up. And then eventually I feel like God did open my eyes, you know? And like, I feel like even if you don't know or see where you're going because, you know, you have this, like, I don't think it's something that can't be removed from your life, you know? I think there is healing involved. And like, I think, you know, just be patient with yourself. You have to love yourself too, you know? But like, not too much, but like just enough. You gotta love God first.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah.
I think during college, like that, like with whole like mental health too, like that also like hindered me a lot with being, I guess, part of community. It's like that whole thing where it's like, again, am I a part of Emmaus? Like, am I truly a part of this community that I can call like my family or like home, basically? Like, not just me, I feel like other students as well, they experience just that whole like social anxiety and just anxiety in general, where it's like, oh, like if I show up, like would some people like even care, or like just feeling like they're not being seen. And I think like all those reasons are so valid because like, I mean, I've also experienced that too, where it's like, oh, like it wouldn't make a difference whether or not like I'm there or not, like not just like as a leader like serving, but also just like as a Emmaus member. But I think to overcome like those thoughts is like so powerful, and also so like what God has planned for you, like at the end of the road, like you only get to see that after you overcome it.
Right.
And that's in and of itself is just like a huge blessing. Yeah.
I think in those times, I think even when I couldn't see, like a truth I clung on to, and I actually just like came across this as I was reading too recently, and like it's I forgot what the passage was, but like I think the word like El Roy stuck out to me, and it means like the God who sees, you know, and you know like I think I did feel like I wasn't seen a lot too. But one thing I knew was like, oh, I know God sees me, you know, like I know even if, you know, like, you know, like you said, people might come out to these gatherings wanting to be seen, wanting to be known. But like, I think that's I guess like that's an expectation you can have, but I think it's one that only God can really
Right.
fulfill.
Yeah.
You know? And like I began to explore what that really meant. Like, what does it mean that like to be seen by God instead of wanting to be seen by people?
Right.
You know? And I think that helped me navigate, I guess, like when I felt blind by mental illness.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for joining us on this PEMCAST
Thank
episode,
you.
our fellow PEMCAST member. And yeah, it's kind of crazy now that like we shared our stories that it just kind of aligns, which is kind of crazy. So I think this is very purposeful.
Aren't you INFP?
Oh my gosh. Well, I switched between P and J. Why?
Oh.
What are you?
I'm INFP.
I'll be P just for you today.
Okay.
Yay! Good talk. But yeah, I guess thank you for tuning in. And I guess if there was like anything to take away, I would say it's just to show up, like keep showing up and keep walking. Like let's keep walking together. So yeah. And if you have like mental health issues, you can reach out to us and we'll like walk with you, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good talk.